And without further ado, I want to introduce Tanveer Kaur and Jorg Thuijls presenting the next session here, which is on the use and reuse of CAP services and aspects. Just as you introduced, CAP is a lot about services. Everything in CAP is a service. And those two will show you now how to actually do it on hand, with hand, in code.
Thanks, Volker. Hello, everybody. This is Tanveer. My name is Jorg. We are sharing an office. As you can see, the COVID has been pretty good to us. We found it easier this way because we'll be sharing quite a bit of the same sort of code and code setup as we go through the next 20 minutes to show you what we found out about the reusability aspects of CAP. So without trying to lose too much time, I'll share my screen and we're going to be off. All right, so first for a bit of an agenda, we'll be showing you a little bit on the demo that we built, which is 3 little applications, 2 of which are reused in the third. So there's a few CAP projects to show and a few entities to demo there. Then I will pick up the command line for you and tell you how to actually scaffold the application so that you can make a reusable application. So this will include turning an app into a package and importing an EDMX file into another application. After we've done that, we'll show you how the reusability aspects of CDS work inside the third application, the amalgamation. So we'll show you how to extend an entity and use an external service for that. And last, we have a few discussion points that I think were going to be interesting because there is a bit to talk about. Now, first, why did we start looking at reusability? Because we were looking at applications that were similar for similar customers, but ended up having to have separate fields for certain things, sort of a multi-tenancy kind of affair, but not entirely the same, obviously. In a SaaS environment, that is quite common, that one customer wants something else than the others, and you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we started looking at CAP from that point of view. So we put together a little demo. So first of all, you can see at the top here, these 3 folders in my Visual Studio Code. They're the 3 applications we'll be discussing. So there is a base application, as we've called it, which we've extended. There is an external service, and there is the amalgamation up there. So this is a little index file I put together to collect my links so I don't forget anything. So the first application is a small CAP project. It only really has one entity, which is an entity for addresses. It's very basic. So we have a street and a city. We have 2 of them at the moment, and that's pretty much all there is to that particular CAP application. Then we have our base application, which has 2 entities. There is orders and an association to customers, which is also very basic, as you can see. We decided to not overly complicate this because they're not the interesting parts of reusability. So the last one here then is the expansion, just to show you that the orders expand into customers. This application also has a Fiori screen, which was 10 lines of annotation, so don't expect too much of it. It's used for reusability. So this is just a list of the orders we were just looking at. Here's a list of fields, and that's pretty much the base application. So then our extensions here, the extension CDS now has a combination of all of these. So it still has your addresses, customers, and orders, but it also has order items now. and the orders have been expanded with both the price and the order item. So these come out of the extension application all by itself. Here's the orders with the items as an extension. So one order, multiple items here in the array. And here is the customer with an address. This address comes from our external addresses service. So that is fetched from the port 4006. So last we inherited the application from our base, which now runs under our extended application, as you can see here, port 4004. This is the exact same app, except that running on a different project, it now has an additional field, and with the power of elements and annotations, that doesn't really make any difference to this thing. It's just a component file, and that's it. So that's the context of our talk in the next 15 minutes. First, I will show you how. I'll keep this screen. How you would make a application that reuses bits and pieces. So you start with an application that you would like to reuse. In our case, it's our base. This is the one. It needs to be turned into an NPM package. Now, in a productive environment, you would probably publish it to a private NPM, for instance, or a self-hosted NPM. There are solutions that run on Docker. But for the purpose of our local demo, we'll just use a local tarball, in which case the command is npm pack. So here's a local file, array.cat.base. And this produces a file based on our package.json file. It's called reuse base, and then the version that comes out of the base package.json. Just to demonstrate, that's the top two fields there. And it pretty much just zipped everything into a tarball. Really, you can see it sitting here at the bottom. So in addition, we have our addresses, EDMX file. It's really just the downloaded metadata file from the application running on port 4006, right? This, you can see the street and city fields here. And I downloaded it for convenience sake. So now we need an application that reuses all of this. So to do that, well, let's make a folder called test. And inside test, we'll make a CDS application, which is now, well, running as CDS does. So to import the node package, we should really move it. And I'm moving it in here because if you actually want to deploy it, which is possible, right? If you want to deploy this to Cloud Foundry, for instance, you do need to make this file available. Since it's based on local files, it kind of needs to be in your repository since it's not in an online storage somewhere. So adding that, using pnpm for brevity's sake, it's a bit quicker, but usually it's npm add or npm install, right? So this installed all our dependencies including the base app. That was the SQLite install. So in here now, so far we have a package.json that includes our reuse base application, which is available now as a require reuse base. You don't have to use this as a local file anymore. It's now a dependency of the actual project. To load an EDMX file, the command is cds import. My taskbar, and this copies the address EDMX file and copies it into our services here and converts it into a CSN file. So this application is pretty much ready to go. So you can now import the existing entities from both the addresses and from the base application, which was the orders and the customers. Now we are not going to reinvent this entire application by copying and pasting. So at this point, I'm going to hand the reins over to Tanveer, who will show us the implementation from the CAP side.
Hello, everyone. We are going to start with the demo of what we did in the actual applications. So this is our base application. And in this, we have our schema file, as you can see. I'll just drop it down. Okay. So this is where we have our entities, orders and customers. We have two fields defined for each entity. For orders, we have description and customer. For customers, we have name and orders. Within the base application, we also have the front end section, which is contained in the web app folder. As you can see, this will also be extended in our all application, which is our extended application, obviously. The other project that we are going to get our service from is the external one. I'll also show you the schema file for this. It basically have only one entity called addresses, which contains only two fields, street and city. Now the real fun begins. We are gonna get into our extended application. Let me show you the schema for this one. So this is the schema file where we are extending our entities and services from other projects. Here you can see we are using the namespace from our base application, putting it as base, and this is the path from where our CDS compiler is gonna get this CDS file for us, from where we'll be getting our entities, which is order and customers. In this schema file, we have also defined another entity called order items with a few fields. This is then associated with the order entity. Apart from that, we have also added two fields in the main order entity, which is price and items. And for customer entity, we have added the address field, which we are going to fetch from the address service, which is an external service that we're going to be extending. It is defined here. Here we are importing the external definition from CSN file, which Jorg has already shown you that how it is created in the external folder. Now going to the service part. Now we are going to check how the service is connected. In the admin CDS, we are creating the service and we are getting orders from the base schema and order items from the current schema, customers from the base schema, and the address from the address service. In the admin JS, now we are going to connect to the external CDS, and this is how we are going to connect to the external CDS. If you see this address service, we are having the path set in the cd-src.json file. This is from where it is gonna fetch us. This is the local host link that's where the service is already sitting. Now, if you see at the line 19, the customer data is requested. Here we are storing the address from the customers in an array and requesting the corresponding addresses from the address service, and then mapping it to the customers. This is the server.js file. We are serving the static content of the base app to our application using Express.js middleware. Basically what it does, it extends the UI from our base application to our reused or extended application. And that concludes what we have done inside the applications. Over to you, Jorg.
Okay, thanks, Tanveer. So that's really the reusability aspects of CAP in a nutshell. There are other options like not extending database entities, but taking an external service and using that inside another external service and cobbling together a new service for a new application altogether. But the mashup service that SAP provides, in the CAP samples, already illustrates that quite well. So we have focused predominantly on the entities part of it. So because that's kind of the reusability done, I did have a few things I wanted to talk about in addition to these. And I had a couple of talking points. Let's make this nice. So when it comes time to deployment, I think it is good to remember that reusability here only implies reusability of definitions. So it's not reusability of data and tables per se, right? So when you deploy these, at least to HANA Cloud, it creates HDI containers of their own. There is no shared tables. There's no shared data in any of these. They're completely separate applications for all intents and purposes. So if you would be making a search help, for instance, then maybe do that in another way, make a separate service and connect to that or something like that. I don't think that's entirely surprising, but I kind of wanted to try that. So I figure it might be worth knowing anyway. So because these things do not share any deployments, you can deploy your base application, start using it, bug fix it, and deploy changes to it without affecting the extensions at all, because the base is now a dependency as a snapshot in time, essentially, of the state that your application was in, your application definition was in when you made the package. And that kind of leads me into the second topic I was hoping to discuss, which is versioning, and that could be a bit of a quagmire. So today we used npm pack, right? So npm pack uses the package.json file, and it will take the name and it will take the version in there. npm pack does not check if that version is accurate or current. So you can make the same package with the same version multiple times and send that to all your friends to use, and they will all have a different app. If you use something like private npm JS or something like that, it actually forces you to update the package.json version, right? An npm update version. I forget what the actual commands are, but that will at least get you to think about your versioning from a packaging point of view. However, if you deploy this, the mtar files are made out of the information in your MTA YAML file, which is not in sync with your package.json file. So it is very possible to deploy an MTA with a different version than your reusability, than your reuse package, even though they're the same. So if you don't keep very tight control over what you are doing with versioning, you are very quickly going to run into a lot of trouble. It also implies that if you were to make a base application like we did, and you think this is nice functionality, I like this functionality, I'm going to use it in this app and maybe in that app, it'd be worth mentioning that you could potentially be running and debugging multiple versions of the same thing as well. So because it's a package with a package dependency and a particular version in your package log. So if you're running into issues in one of your applications, you not only need to check out what package it is using, but also which versions it is, and then see if there's any fixes on that available already in updated versions, for instance. So it does complicate your landscape if you don't think about any of these things like upfront, right? in contrast to an external service where you import the EDMX definition and you have your CSN file sitting there with the definition, if somebody updates that external service, your application is no longer in sync with the definitions of the actual running service. So a deployment to the external service, those changes are immediate and potentially breaking, right? So if I were to go down the path of using these reusability concepts in an actual live application, I would set up a pretty beefy CI/CD pipeline to try and check this versioning stuff before trying to allowing the deployment of checking the version in the package JSON and empty YAML file is relatively easy, but you need to be aware that there's dependencies, or there could be dependencies. Okay, security, which is a topic I sadly did not get enough time for to sort out. But when you're doing this locally anyway, it seems like you need to copy this security, like at least the mock version of my security, which I did have in there before. It was not taken along. I had to copy the CDS RC JSON, at least the mock version. I'm guessing because they're completely separate apps on cloud, on BTP as we call it now, I'm guessing I also need to copy the roles. I'm not sure, but I would be amiss if I didn't say that there might be some consequences for your security roles. I was hoping, in addition, that the base application perhaps could provide something in Postgres, for instance. You have row-level security, right, where you can enforce security on the database level. So if you attach a policy to a table where you say where customer equals customer ID this, right, which we now have as an annotation, in Postgres, select star from that table returns a limited list of information. I was kind of hoping that the base app and the annotations there could function as something similar, but annotations can be overwritten, and it also goes for the annotations on a database entity that you're providing through reuse. I'm running out of time, aren't I? Okay, so the last one is on the external front. External services, as I mentioned, if the external service changes, your CSN is out of whack and your definitions might be running into trouble. And if you're using those to some extent in your JS implementation, in your service implementation, your app might actually crash, right? So it's not just a data mismatch, it's actually potentially breaking, and it's immediate on deployment. So as opposed to in the package dependency, right? I also found that when I was tinkering with this, V2 and V4 don't mix very well, mostly in dates, because the date format between 2 and 4 is different, so you cannot simply pass, even if the schemas match. You cannot simply pass data from 2 into 4 and backwards. You're going to have to do a lot of looping and converting if that is the case. Well, I guess we are sort of out of material at this point. Would there be?
But you're not out of questions.
Yes.
So let me relay some from the audience. So first and foremost, because you've actually shown hands-on coding, excellent, by the way. Is the code for the demo available afterwards somewhere?
Yeah, it's. I think it's already on our public Git. I will spread the link in the chat later.
Excellent. Then the question that was kind of difficult for you to answer probably, is this reusability possible for the Java runtime as well?
Yeah, I haven't. I don't. If I look at the documentation, the Java parts are not as well explained as the Node version of it. So I don't actually know. I don't think so in that case. Usually the documentation for CAP is actually quite good. But the Java version in some places is lacking. So no, I don't think it's at the same level. But maybe somebody from SAP could enlighten us there.
I know there are some guys in the chat from SAP Cap Core Java team, so please, as Jorg said, enlighten us. And then there's another one. Can we use aspect for reusabilities instead of inheritance to be more functional of sorts? So aspect CDS aspects, I think they're referring to.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that actually is. I'm not sure what an aspect is. You can. It's not so much inheritance either. It's more like extending. And there is replacing. This is JavaScript, right? It's not like a class. You're just replacing parts of an object with other parts of an object. And that applies to the CDS entity, it applies to the annotations, and it applies to the functions in your service implementation as well. You can take a service implementation and reuse it wholesale, or you can cherry pick parts and replace parts with other parts. Right. So I don't know if that is aspects, but that is kind of how inheritance works. It's in this case, it's inherited in JavaScript, not be inheritance essentially.
That were the questions from the chat. Probably I can ask you two, Tanveer and Jorg, to stay on a little in the chat even, and then might have the opportunity for the audience to again address you directly, and you might be able to pick up one or the other question. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks for the great coding. Thanks for both of you actually doing stuff. Adrian Gerle in the keynote kind of disappeared, so I'm sorry for all of you. And we're heading at 10:35 for the next session with Sebastian Esch. I'll see you guys back then.